Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about the political situation after SHAHBAZ GILL statement and the preceding events. We've seen the reaction come in from different political parties, also particularly the PTI, as far as distancing themselves from the statement is concerned. What are the ramifications of SHAHBAZ GILL's arrest overall on the political scene? We've also seen different kind of statements come in vis-a-vis the Army Act. Also, as far as other political parties are concerned, there has been a universal condemnation of the remarks. There's also an overall distancing itself as far as the PTI is concerned. What can we expect in the political scene in the next couple of weeks preceding this? We'll be talking about that. Of course, we also want to take a moment to talk about the Chief of Army Staff being at Sandhurst. Of course, it's a momentous occasion for Pakistan. Also, it's a huge deal as far as Pakistan is concerned. We've also something to be proud as far as our armed forces are concerned. Their contribution towards the war of terror is concerned, having been acknowledged all over the world. So we want to take a moment to commemorate that, to feel pride in our armed forces today before we go on. Right. I have with me Amir Hussain, who's a columnist. Thank you so much for joining us today. We also have with us Barrister Safiullah Ghori, who's a political analyst. Thank you for joining us today. Let's start off. Amir Sahab, as far as this unfortunate spate of events is concerned, one has to call it that. Preceding, we saw the statement come in from SHAHBAZ GILL Saab and then, the events that followed. How do you look at the political scenario post the statement that came, and also as far as the PTI particularly is concerned? Of course, like we were earlier talking about, there has been an overall distancing from the remarks by the party. How do you look at that?
Well, I think the statements that came from SHAHBAZ GILL were really serious, because the charges that have been put against him are the charges of sedition and inciting mutiny within rank and files, which is, I think, a serious charge to see with it. And no political party with the same set of mind would accept our own such statements coming from an individual. But having said that, SHAHBAZ GILL was at the top brass of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf leadership. He's
the Chief of Staff of Imran Khan Saab.
Yeah, absolutely. So he was operating from a very responsible position, and then suddenly he came up with these kind of statements which actually hurt many people, the stakeholders in the country. Of course, you have to operate within the state system, through a parliamentary system, to strike a balance between different powers corridors, but you cannot come up, lash out with such statements which are actually trying to
but do you think it's just, in your opinion, and of course we have no way of knowing this for a fact, but in your opinion, as far as these remarks are concerned, do you feel that these are it's target, as far as overall the remarks are concerned, do you think that they were at this, they've been taken to be targeted, or do you think that they were an inadvertent error? How would you look at this?
Well, I think there are two ways to look at this particular case. One is that, of course, there were some irresponsible statements coming from a senior political leader. Secondly, because the political situation in the country, we were in the crisis, two major political parties were at loggerhead. So when one party is in power and another is out of the power, politics also goes on.
But there is something, let me come back to you. Let me go to Barrister Safiullah Ghori and I'll come back to you. Safiullah, there is, there's this allusion to the fact, I mean, there's no confirmation, but it is being said that this was some text which was being read. We don't know if that's true or not. But how do you look at the words that were used? How do you look at the overall way that they were used on, by SHAHBAZ GILL Saab?
Hit the nail on the head. I've had the unfortunate experience of listening to the original audio recording of the conversation that was taking place, and so it looks very scripted. it looks like, and you're absolutely correct. Obviously, he wasn't reading out his text. We couldn't see him. He was taken on the phone like I am being taken on the phone right now, except that you can see me on Skype. You couldn't. Yeah, you could only hear his audio, but the way in which he was reading each and every word carefully is very unlike how SHAHBAZ GILL normally speaks. SHAHBAZ GILL is renowned almost for his lack of manners when he's talking on television, and he speaks very frankly. But the way he was talking and the way all of this was being read out was in a very formal manner, almost like a speech, almost as if somebody was giving a lesson to the nation. And also, I think it's necessary to mention here something that's very odd about this entire audio clip that you might have also heard, is the fact that since it was on ARY and the anchors of those TV shows are also renowned for interrupting their guests, we have been seeing their behavior online for a very long time. Whenever somebody's talking, they don't back out. They just cut the guest whenever they feel like they have to, and in this case, they remained quiet. So it almost feels like this entire thing was scripted. It almost feels dramatic the way it was done, and if one was to listen to this, I think these criminal charges carry a lot of weight. There are 10 sections that have been imposed upon SHAHBAZ GILL, and if one was to listen to them, one would believe that this was not SHAHBAZ GILL's own doing. He was definitely, or almost, I mean, at least as far as one can imagine and deduce from the video, and any reasonable mind would say that this was not the work of one individual, but rather a group of individuals who came up with a text which had good vocabulary, unlike SHAHBAZ GILL's normal vocabulary, which had a good pace of speaking with emphasis on some words, which is once again unlike SHAHBAZ GILL's normal way of communication, which was read out without any interruptions, which is unlike the kind of shows that normally take place on ARY. And so this makes me believe that there was a message that was being delivered, and this message was delivered because of frustrations by a particular political party. I don't know how far this is going to play out, how institutions would look at it. I feel like in a way PTI.
Let me come back to you. But overall, I mean, I want to then come and talk about this. As far as criticizing of institutions is concerned, we have to acknowledge at this instance that there has been, you know, a certain fortitude, there has been a certain letting go as far as criticism on institutions is concerned, because we have been seeing criticism on institution coming from nearly all quarters, and you know there has been no reaction. So for this kind of you know, incitement, or this kind of, you know, the text like you are saying, to have this kind of reaction, you know, that there has been a certain tolerance. We have to acknowledge that, right?
No, we don't have to acknowledge it, and I'll tell you why. There's a difference between the way things have been presented. Let me just try and give you an example that you might perhaps understand. This is an example I gave to somebody today. So if I was to right now on this show say, MAHRUKH, you are wrong, that is a criticism on you. That is a criticism that you may take in good stride or bad stride. However, it would not be a direct assault against you. However, if I actively started saying that the producer of this show, taking his name, and then started saying he should cut MAHRUKH out, and started to actively name the people who can cut you from this show, would be a very, very different thing. So far, people have criticized the institution, but they have not exactly pointed out who within that institution should go and try and topple the system. This degree of specification as to who needs to take what action is, in my opinion, mutiny, and I think that's why.
Yes, let me come back to you, but my point is that when we talk about criticism against institution, the example that you gave, when you criticize generally, there has been to a large extent a huge amount of tolerance for that kind of criticism. And we have to acknowledge that in the political arena. I want to take Rana Ehsan Afzal on board with this. We have him with us. Sorry. Rana Ehsan Afzal Saab from the PMLN. Rana Saab, we've been talking about the fact that these remarks were, Safiullah Ghori is also saying that these were targeted, these were, clearly about certain individuals. They were made, they were quite particular in that sense. Whereas if you look at criticism, generally speaking, criticism against institutions has been taken, quite, I would say, quite, one can say quite nicely, for the lack of a better word, by all institutions. Would you agree to that?
Well, I think, we have to differentiate. When PMLN was criticizing, when they were in opposition, the criticism was that the establishment or the armed forces should not get involved in politics and they should not be maneuvering in the background. That was the criticism. But what SHAHBAZ GILL was saying that...
which has been taken quite... I mean, we haven't seen any kind of reaction come in from any, institution.
No. There was reaction when someone went overboard. For example, when, our MNA from Sheikhupura, Javed Saab, he said something of that sort. A case was opened against him. And then, if you remember in the Kashmir elections, one of our members from PMLN, a candidate of PMLN, said something, regarding India, and everyone condemned. So, in Pakistan, what the history we have, we've seen that, the armed forces of the military establishment have come into politics. There have been coups. So, when you're criticizing on the fact that, the constitution should be implemented, that is something else. And when you criticize and when you say that, we are the good ones and officers should support us and they should not listen to their senior officers and they should stand up against that because, we are the good ones. That is something else. That is, I think, you're inciting mutiny. You're inciting the command, the system in, in the army, and that was wrong. That is where they crossed the line.
Okay. But Rana Saab, as far as reports, there has been some, as far as PTI leadership is concerned, they're talking about the treatment as SHAHBAZ GILL Saab has been meted out to him, the way that he's being investigated, all of those things. Can you comment on that? Because we've seen comments from the Islamabad police, as I understand, saying and categorically saying that there has been no manhandling, there has been no torture, those allegations are inaccurate, incorrect.
Well, you see, MAHRUKH, have you ever seen a video of the US police trying to arrest a person who has committed some offense, and when they resist, the police uses force? So, in Pakistan, we need to learn to respect the police, and when police is trying to perform its duty, we cannot be a hurdle in that. If someone comes to arrest me, I have two options. Either I resist or fight back, or I give up and surrender. So when the police comes, we should all surrender and not resist and fight. Because if we do, then obviously the police is going to use force to implement their orders. What we saw in that video was that, first of all, there was a propaganda that people in civilian clothes came. No, there was a police van and police officials, and they tried to knock on the window and ask SHAHBAZ GILL to come out. When he did not comply, they had to enforce the arrest that according to the FIR, and that is what they did. So I think, I would agree with the police statement, and I would also, from your platform, tell to the audience that we cannot put hurdles when law enforcement is, doing what they're supposed to do. You have to comply. And when you don't comply with what they're trying to implement, then they can use force and things can get messy.
Rana Saab, let me come back to you, but I want your comments on Imran Khan Saab, when he spoke and talked about a conspiracy against PTI being hatched. He talked about the fact that this was, him being pitted against the armed forces and it was part of a conspiracy. Let me come back. I want your comments on this. Amir Saab, the same question to you.
Sorry, can you?
As far as, let's put this to Rana Saab and then I'll come back to you. Rana Saab, how would you answer Imran Khan Saab's assertion that this is a conspiracy and his party is being pitted against the armed forces?
Well, you see, the conspiracy is that Imran Khan keeps on saying that the military or the establishment should not be neutral. Then he talks about, even animals are not neutral. Then he says that, if a guard of a house, he has to take sides. He cannot be neutral. So the demand of what Imran Khan is demanding from the military is unconstitutional. By the constitution, they have to be neutral. So by these demands, he himself is making a controversy. He himself is making a conspiracy. No one is pushing him to make these statements, these bizarre statements that he keeps on making. So I think, I feel that it is about time that all political parties should agree on the point that the establishment of the military should play its role. It has a vital, important role, but it should be according to the constitution, and that is that they have to be neutral.
Barrister Safiullah. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. So I concur with what has just been said. I think for Imran Khan, everything is a conspiracy against him. States, entire countries, superpowers are conspiring against him. Governments within the country are conspiring against him. I think the whole selling point of PTI is to sell a victim mentality, and that's the only way they were able to garner votes, by constantly telling people that we are victims of massive conspiracies from every country, every religion, every sector, every political party, whatever have you. However, it has been said earlier on this show that PTI has distanced itself from these statements. I feel it has not. In fact, they could have outrightly condemned it. They could have said that what SHAHBAZ GILL said was incorrect and in bad faith. The only thing that we hear is Fawad Chaudhry having said that better words could have been used. That's not the crux of it. There is a serious offense that has been carried out here. These are all serious charges. Those serious charges, the criminality of them have not been addressed by PTI as yet. So much so that Imran Khan himself has now gone ahead and said that this is a conspiracy against him. Once again, giving it tangible defense instead of distancing himself, instead of saying that.
Do you think, Safiullah, that the narrative, as far as the narrative of PTI is concerned, and I think we've talked about this before also, the narrative, conspiracy narrative, and then now this saying that this is also part of a larger conspiracy to pit him against the armed forces of his own country. Perhaps the narrative has now gone wrong. Do you think they've gone too far? For it to be, actually for people to follow that, for people to agree to that. Do you think now it's gone, it's gone wrong somewhere as far as, their whole narrative is concerned?
I don't think, no, it has gone wrong. I think this was always a narrative. So the way I view PTI is, I view it as a cult. And in a cult, everybody is, only the members of those cults are going to go to heaven and everybody else is going to go to hell. And that's just the general narrative. That's how people end up believing in something that can sometimes be very, very dangerous. With PTI, that is the narrative that has been peddled from day one, that everybody is corrupt with the exception of PTI, no matter which party they come from, even if they come from previous parties.
But don't you think they've taken it too far now?
No, I think this is in line with what they've been doing for a while now. I think this is something that the people of the supporters of PTI are still liking this, and that's what matters. What matters is not what the state institutions think. What matters is not what courts think. What matters is not what anybody else thinks. It's only what their vote bank thinks, and their vote bank.
But don't you think that vote bank? Let me come back to you, Amrit Saab. Don't you think that vote bank is not somehow aligning itself with this statement? Overall, of course, we are a patriotic lot. We've also seen, the statement itself has been played. People have looked, the way that it was made, whatever, the incitement of it, all of that. Don't you think that there is now a backlash to what they're trying to say?
Well, I think what Safiullah was saying, I agree with him that there is a xenophobic narrative that is coming forth, which is dangerous, of course. But for a long period of time, this was an accumulative impact. The middle classes in particular, who came out to the street, in support of a new governance, political dispensation for the country. And when they started to build narrative, from 2018 onward, but suddenly when they were out of the power last year, there was a new intensity coming into the narrative, and they were blaming the state institutions for letting them go and not protecting them and all this and that. I think as far as public is concerned, if you look at the overall mood of the public, this narrative has been working well for them.
But isn't it now a rejection of this the way that they've now tried to
spin
this?
Well, I think there is going to be a great disadvantage for the PTI with this particular episode when it has gone out of proportion.
That's what I mean.
Because the proportionality is important. If you want to engage with the state institutions, with the power corridors, then there is a way of doing that. You cannot break all the rules. You cannot incite mutiny or sedition, which is dangerous. Of course, then there is instability attached to it. I think people have started to realize the fact that we want a new political dispensation, but we don't want to.
We don't want. I mean, of course, there's a huge respect for institutions within everyone, and I think that. Let me go to Rana Sahib. Rana Sahib, do you agree? You think that this is perhaps when even when you talk about their conspiracy narrative, don't you think they've gone too far in trying to get people to support them, and this will have its own consequences, in terms of the support bank also, because people necessarily, people have a respect for institutions. They would never want to perhaps side with a party that has gone so far out.
Well, I think, the political debate is really off track. The situation of the economy is dire, and it is the need of the day that the opposition and the government should be working together on a minimalistic level of understanding regarding the economy and how things are required to move forward. While on the other side, we have this, party PTI, which is on a, totally different tangent. They are saying that we are doing jihad, it's a holy war. They're bringing in religion. They are saying that it is a war against all corrupt, whereas they themselves are dated. You've seen the $250 million money laundering case where 650 canals have been donated by a property tycoon to them for clearing out that money laundering issue. And similarly, the Tosha Khana case and now the foreign funding, and the list goes on. But yet, they keep on repeating their narrative of being clean. And the fact that, their members just ignore this and keep supporting him and do not ask questions, that is also surprising. So I think, the debate needs to come back to reality. The debate should be on performance. The debate should be on deliverables. But sadly, I think, it has been, the people are being misguided, and they are being, a narrative of conspiracy is being built, and I think, over time, they are being exposed. Like just now, the US conspiracy has been exposed.
This episode has particularly exposed the PTI, you think?
Well, I think for a man who runs on common sense, things are pretty clear. That they gave a red carpet to the US ambassador. They got donations of 36 cars. Where they said that, we want Khud Mukhtari. And we saw that they've been hiring lobbyists in the USA so they can, do lobbying in the US in their favor. So all of this, for anyone who has, basic common sense would realize that, their political rhetoric is different from their real politics or what they believe in and what their performance was. So I think, over time, these conspiracy theories cannot pass the test of time and pass the test of truth. So truth will obviously overcome these conspiracies, but,
Let me come back to you. Safiullah, do you think that there's a chance now, what Rana Sahib is saying, he's been saying that, this is, and I think that I would agree with him, he's saying that the debate should be more, centering this, the concern at this time should be our economy, the concern should be coming together and, moving towards a better economy, a country that's functional in a better sense before we can talk about elections, general elections, all of those things. Do you think that there's a chance that now the opposition maybe able to move towards that, PTI in particular?
It's a very good question, of course, and I think that what you're saying is absolutely sensible. We obviously need to focus on the economy first. Economy is, of course, in shambles. There's no doubt about it, and anything else now should be second priority. However, I don't believe that's going to play out in reality. I think a lot of things are happening behind the scenes that we are aware of. We know, for instance, that General Saab is visiting England. There might be certain meetings to chart out election schedules, and so I think we will be hearing about elections soon enough. It's almost inevitable now that that would happen, because a lot of pending things that were thorns in these elections have now been cleared out. The political parties have now come on to better consensus. We have even the military establishment itself that has now been, as you obviously know, there have been certain transfer postings and certain changes within the military, which will now make the process of elections a lot smoother. So I think
before I go to Amir Saab, I'm going to ask Rana Saab to comment on this. Rana Saab, do you have a comment for us? Do you think there are chances that are we moving closer to elections? Is there likely to be an announcement at all? Rana Saab, can you hear me? No, I don't think he can. Amir Saab, what do you think?
Well, I think as far as the elections are concerned, the situation is still precarious, unpredictable. There is the political instability. With the IMF, we have though a go ahead from the IMF, but
we haven't received the money that's likely to be end August, and we don't have. I mean, for the Prime Minister has said again and again, and he keeps on saying this, that political parties should come together, and he would welcome the opposition to come together and talk about a charter of economy.
There has to be a reconciliation. There has to be a charter of economy right now, because if you want to go for election, you have to have an interim arrangement. In the interim arrangement, IMF may not be confident enough to go with the deal, and I think I don't see election coming forth in 2-3 months time, maybe after 5-6 months, because there are many things that have to be sorted out before we go into elections, if we want some sort of stability,
and we want there to be pursuant to that a credible government with a performance, all of those things. Absolutely. Of course. Rana Saab, can you hear me? No, he's not. Safiullah, as far as elections are concerned, certainly that's one of those demands from the PTI that is being made consistently since the vote of no confidence happened. There's no doubt about that. But do you think they're prepared for governance? Because, last time, and I think I put this question to somebody from the PTI in the last program I had, as far as governance is concerned, that is something that there were issues of governance in the last government. There's no denying that. When we look at the larger political scenario, we have the government, they have government in Punjab and KP at this time also. So in terms of the situation being a little haphazard, there's no denying that is a fact at this time. There's a different government in federal government at this time. But overall, in your opinion, elections seems to be a goal, but shouldn't governance and the fact that will they be able to govern, will they be able to deliver, be an issue for any government also, and not just the elections, which seems to be the end game here?
I think you're very right? So governance should obviously take priority. The economy should, of course, take priority. We do not see these things happening, but what we do know for a fact is that if we were to look at stats, and stats are neutral, stats do not take any sides. We see that governance during the PTI government was considerably worse. The rupee was considerably more devalued. Our foreign debts did increase. Our inflation did increase. Our records in corruption decreased. Our records in the Human Development Index decreased. And so, of course, we have neutral measures of seeing how the PTI was governing. Now, when you have lost in governance, the only thing then that you can talk about is the idea of conspiracies. You can bring in religion, you can bring in other ideological things that would motivate the people emotionally to look away from logical statistics and look towards things that evoke their emotions. And that is
But
what the PTI is doing
But
in a
Safula,
very
as
tyrannical
far as
manner.
their supporters also concerned, you know, these people who, most of these people, you know, I'll go to Amr Saab with this later also, but most of these supporters, the PTI supporters who are at this time supporting Imran Khan Saab are the same people who were criticizing his style of governance. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're absolutely right. But see, this is where our myopia steps in, Maruf, because I think it doesn't take a genius to try and just look at the recent trends of the rupee and the way the rupee has been increasing or decreasing vis-a-vis the dollar. So we, for instance, see every single time the PTI has lost, the rupee has gained. Every single time the PTI has won, the rupee has fallen. So we saw, for instance, recently in the Punjab elections, the PTI won by a landslide. The rupee lost by a landslide. The rupee crashed. It went down to over 158 rupees per dollar. Now that things have improved, things have once again changed. Things are, IMF is coming around. Other investments are taking place. Once again, the rupee is increasing. So you can clearly draw a correlation between successes of PTI and loss of Pakistan's economy, and loss of PTI and the success of Pakistan's economy. It's very easily plottable on a graph. Honestly, I think one.
Okay, Amr Saab, do you agree? You
If not
think that,
even
you
the
know, what
rupee,
if happen, you know, the
it's
best case scenario for Imran Khan Saab, if his government comes in, what happens to the economy? What happens to the rupee?
Well, I think there are many things which are beyond the control of a ruling government right now, because you have to fulfill the conditionalities of IMF.
Right.
Anyone who comes in with this will have to take some unpopular decisions to run the country. As far as Imran Khan and his PTI is concerned, whenever they were in government, as Safiullah rightly put it, they were never concerned about the economy anyways. The governance has gone down, and the politics of populism has a problem. You can steer the sentiments of people, the religious sentiments, the xenophobic sentiments, the purity, kind of fascist tendencies that comes in, where people start to worship the leaders they don't see logically. So in that sense, if you look at the popularity of Imran Khan, it has gone up, of course. We have unfortunately a big young population who may not be well educated to look into the history of the country, what we have seen in the evolution of political processes. And I think right now it's also the onus rests upon us that we will not be able to educate our people rightly. Right now, I think Imran may, get more votes, but as far as running the country is concerned, as far as the investors are concerned, as far as international diplomacy is concerned, as far as the state institutions are concerned, they have not shown any confidence in his governance. I think that is the big problem for him. So the choice is between populism and the reality, the real politics. And real politics society is weak.
But there are issues. So I'm saying that for a country to be run by somebody like that, there will be issues. Safiullah, do you agree? I mean, there will be major issues, because we are seeing, as far as...
There will be one consequence, Maruf, and that consequence is Pakistan's bankruptcy. And I will tell you why, exactly. So we have seen, for instance, in the last couple of months that a lot of talk has been going on about how Pakistan will end up bankrupt and Pakistan will default on its foreign loans, and that we desperately needed IMF funding. Now, the funding that was to be given to us by China, by Saudi Arabia, and by the UAE was also incumbent upon IMF funding. Now, the question is, who controls the IMF? Who is IMF's biggest funder? It is the United States of America, the very country Imran Khan keeps accusing of conspiring to remove his government. So if Imran Khan goes to the IMF, it is the same as saying he's going to the USA, because the USA runs the IMF, right? So IMF would only give loans to countries that are friendly to the United States. That is something that we have seen. It is being used as a US tool of giving developmental loans to other countries. And if the IMF pulls back, so will Saudi Arabia, so will China, so will the UAE, and Pakistan will have no money, and Pakistan will default. Pakistan will end up bankrupt. So we have now a choice to make. Do we want to be a bankrupt country, or do we want to be a country with a handsome prime minister? Choice is really pretty obvious and in front of us. We might think that when this government comes, it will have talks again with the IMF. However, I want to remind any viewer here
but
that
I want to
all
go to
talks carried
Rana
out
Sahib. I
by
want to
PTI
ask
have
him
failed.
about the PR firm, the you know, alleged PR firm that has been contacted by PTI. Rana Sahib, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Gee, what you know? What are your how would you answer this as far as you know their recourse to PR firms is concerned? Of course, we've had a you know, Fawad Chaudhry Sahib say that it's not really a PR firm; it's to further their narrative, all of that. But what's your, you know, how would you look at that?
And it is US-based
You
firm.
know,
Yes.
You know, when they were kicked out of government, Imran Khan said that the deal or the conspiracy was that if the no confidence is successful, then all the loans will be forgiven and things will improve. And if it is unsuccessful, then the economy will go down. And then it was proven wrong that no loans were forgiven. Actually, we had to really stretch ourselves to get the IMF deal to pass. So that propaganda failed. And then later on, he started saying that, you know, they're going to make Pakistan become like Sri Lanka. So they actually forget the lies they tell to the public, but after each week, there is a new story which comes up. Now, you know, obviously they're denying this lobbying, or, you know, they're denying that they're not doing it. But all of this shows that they have no stance. Their stance keeps on changing. But the surprising thing is that their followers, or, you know, the way the media is handling it, you know, they don't ask these questions. That how can you change your narrative so many times and so quickly? Anyone, and that is the reason I think that Imran Khan does not come in front of the media. He does not do a press conference. He just comes and he gives his narrative, and that's it. There are no questions asked. And whenever some journalist does ask a question, then you see that, you know, he got angry and he shut him off. So, you know, I guess what is required today is journalism which asks the right question, and that is not happening.
Right, let me go to Bester Saif, who's with us from the PTI. Ji, Bester Saab, can you hear me?
Ji,
Ji. Bester Saab, as far as as far as SHAHBAZ GILL Saab is concerned, the unfortunate spate of events there. As far as the PTI is concerned, what is your party line? Has the party distanced itself from the statements that were made by him? What does the PTI say about the statements that SHAHBAZ GILL Saab made?
Well, SHAHBAZ GILL Saab has made a statement in a live program on a television channel. And of course, there were certain parts of his statement which one could object to, shouldn't have been said in the way that the kind of words used probably were inappropriate. And then there is a course of action for that. There is a legal procedure available, and I believe that the legal procedure has been activated in his case. Fair enough, but our take on his statement is that even if there is something wrong with that statement, and even if somebody has an objection to his statements or the use of his words, he should have been dealt in accordance with the provisions of law and in accordance with the constitutional provision of, I would say, Article 25, which requires that everyone should be dealt with and is equal before the law, and equal protection of law is available to everybody. Whereas we have been witnessing that in his case, the law has been molded in such a way that it is basically a victimization of SHAHBAZ GILL in person. Look at the treatment meted out to his driver's wife and a 3-year-old kid. Look at the way he has been tortured physically. I'm sure the last time I checked Pakistani legal system, I think such actions are absolutely illegal, rather sanctioned under international law.
Right.
And they
That's
come
why
under the
you're
ambit
saying
of
that
law.
it should. You're saying that it should be, any action that is taken pursuant to those statements should be legal, and recourse to law should be given to him, all of those things. But in terms of having been given access to counsel, having been presented in front of a magistrate, having been given all of those amenities, all of those rights were given to Shahbaz Gill Sahab, as I understand. This is what the Islamabad police says. As far as the PTI is concerned, what is the party line as far as those remarks are concerned? Do you stand by what Shahbaz Gill Sahab said, or is the party saying that those were his personal remarks? What does the party say?
No, the party, I think, has made it very clear time and again since this incident took place that yes, there are certain parts of his statement which are objectionable, which is not the party line, and the party would not officially go to that extent. And the kind of words used some of those words were absolutely inappropriate. That is what the party line is, and the party has made it clear. We haven't minced our words in this regard.
Right,
but
fair enough.
in addition to the same thing, we would like, as you pointed out, that legal counsel was provided to him and this and that, yes, but law doesn't act selectively. It has to be a comprehensive application of law in all its aspects. You may provide legal counsel to a person while he is appearing in the court, but when you take him into custody and you start beating him with rods and so badly that there are torture marks on his body, then that means that you are violating the law as well. This is
isn't it true? Please correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it true that he was presented in front of a magistrate and no sign of any torture was found on his person at all?
Well, I have seen reports in which marks of torture were there on his body, but then that's a factual assessment. Of course, people who were present in the court, they would be in a better position to say that, but my reports are, and what I've heard from your media, various channels and social media, blogs and all that, no, he was tortured. And if he himself claims...
My last question to you, we're unfortunately running out of time, but as far as, the Prime Minister says, he's offered again and again that he would like the opposition to come and sit with the government and talk about maybe charter of economy, talk about a charter of governance so that things can move forward. And he would like the opposition's input. Do you think there's any chance of that happening at all?
Well, the point is that for the sake of Prime Minister's concern, or for the sake of analyzing his statement, I believe that the opposition is there with him in the National Assembly, with the likes of the one from Faisalabad and a PTI dissident MNA who has joined his ranks and now is the leader of opposition, and maybe the other one, Nur Alam Saab. They are his opposition, so he can sit and talk to them as much as he likes. But as far as PTI is concerned, I think we are not satisfied with such overtures, and our demand is very clear. PTI chairman has made it amply clear that you have to agree on a date of election, and then we will sit and talk to you.
Right. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your valuable time. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have. Thank you for being with us. Amir Hussain Saab, thank you for joining us. Rana Ihsan Afzal, thank you for being with us. Barrister Muhammad Ali Saif, thank you for your input. Barrister Safiullah Ghori, thank you so much for making the time. As far as the overall picture at this time is concerned, it seems that as far as the PTI is concerned, they say that they do not as a party stand by certain parts of the statement that were made by Shahbaz Gill Sahab, the way that it was made as far as Barrister Muhammad Ali Saif is concerned. He made that clear, but they are adamant that they will not sit with the government on any issue, but the general elections are the one and only demand that Imran Khan Sahab and PTI stand for. As far as the future is concerned, certainly things seem to be looking better as far as the rupee is concerned, the devaluation is concerned. We saw the dollar go further down today. And as far as the economy is concerned, that seems to be the main focus and governance as far as the government is concerned, as far as the Prime Minister is concerned. And of course, his offer again and again for the opposition to come sit with him and talk about those issues. Again, today is a good day for Pakistan, with the Chief of Army Staff being in Sandhurst and being, in all of our 75 years being the chief guest today. So it's a time for some pride for Pakistan. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.